Hi, my name is Dan Lynch, and I'm with the Pennsylvania Game Commission, and this is another segment of the wildlife section of the Envirothon study guide. Today what we're going to do is we're going to talk a little bit about the resources that are on the website that we need to make sure that you're studying so that you do well on the 2017 test. So we're going to talk about the resources. I'm going to show you some of the resources. Then we're going to talk about some of the wildlife identification techniques and the tips and some of the things that you might see on the contest. And we're also going to talk a little bit about some of the mounts and decoys that you might see on the contest. So we're going to start out today talking a little bit about some of the resources on our website. Now, this is the Game Commission website, and I should mention a little bit about why the Game Commission is involved in the Envirothon. We're the state agency responsible for all of the wild birds and mammals in Pennsylvania. And normally our conservation officers are at your county test and your state test, and we're actually facilitating the wildlife portion of the contest. So the Game Commission is involved in it for those reasons, as well as there's going to be a few questions on the test related to the Pennsylvania Hunting and Trapping Digest. And in the digest, we're going to be talking about some of the game and wildlife laws and the regulations. And as long as you check the wildlife references, it'll tell you exactly which sections that we're going to pull questions from. So it is important that you make sure that you get one of these digests. It's also online. Everything that we talk about is online today. All right. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the resources from our website, some of the popular topics that we're probably going to pull some test questions from. White-tailed deer is an important species in Pennsylvania, and there is a section on our website specifically titled Underneath Wildlife on White-tailed Deer. When you click on white-tailed deer, there'll be questions on chronic wasting disease, deer management, how we manage deer in Pennsylvania through regulated hunting. Chronic wasting disease is a very important disease that's currently in Pennsylvania, and you can read up and find some questions as to why and how we're trying to manage it, which is not a very easy thing to do. White nose syndrome, that is related to bats. Most likely there'll be some questions related to white nose syndrome, which is currently ongoing in Pennsylvania and all across the United States. And so we have resources on our web specifically related to white nose syndrome and Pennsylvania bats in general. Also, threatened and endangered species of Pennsylvania. Now again, the Game Commission deals with both birds and mammals. So we're going to be looking at questions that are related to those species in Pennsylvania that are threatened and endangered. And there's a section on our website specifically about T&E species. So it's really important that you check out those references and read about them to learn as much as you can about threatened and endangered species. Now when it comes to species in general, we're not going to take into consideration all of the wildlife notes in Pennsylvania, because there's 62 wildlife notes and there's a lot of information on there. When you check out the website, you'll see that there's a wildlife profile set, and for 2017 we're using wildlife profile set number 1. There's about 15 species on there. You just need to check out those species and then go to your wildlife notes, which are also online, and it's possible to get one of these books that has them all bound. But you can also do it all online. We're only looking at wildlife profile set number 1, looking at all the characteristics and background information on those particular species. Another section on the website that's really important for you to check out is an introduction to Pennsylvania species, habitat, ecosystems, and biodiversity. Those topics on individual species, their ecosystems, and biodiversity are really important, and there is a packet in there that talks specifically about the different types of genetic diversity and topics like that. And there's a section on the website that has all of that information, so make sure you read up on that. Deer aging. One of the topics that deals with wildlife, with deer, is aging of deer. So there's a section on how to age deer. There's usually a question or two on aging a jawbone. So we've got a diagram talking about the different ages and what you're supposed to look for on the teeth. That is, how many teeth, how much wear, how much dentine or enamel is showing. So there's a section on aging deer, as well as the the conservation districts all received a study set of plastic jawbones. So if you don't have them, make sure you contact your conservation district to see if you can borrow them. And that'll help you, because you may not have access to real deer teeth, but with the study guide, the plastic teeth, as well as, don't forget to check out our Game Commission website. Under deer aging, there's a 7-minute video that is really, really good that will help you learn how to age deer. So make sure you check out that website as well. A couple other resources that are important for 2017 underneath deer again is one is called A Place to Call Home. This is information on deer habitats, so this would be an important one to check out. And one called Common Resource of the Commonwealth, Managing Deer for Everyone, which is a simple 2-page resource on how we manage deer in Pennsylvania. Another good resource to check out. One of the books that's also online is called Helping Wildlife Working with Nature. This is a really important book. Lots of information on habitat, biodiversity, carrying capacity, biological carrying capacity versus cultural carrying capacity. This book is online, and you should be able to get this actual resource from the Conservation District as well. So this is a really good resource to check out. So those are some of the resources along with the Hunting and Trapping Digest. And again, don't forget, we're going to be asking questions about laws and regulations, and those things are in here. We're talking about rules on state game lands, how much fluorescent orange you need to hunt certain species. All that information is in here, and there's maybe 5 different areas in the digest that are listed on envirothonpa.org under the wildlife section, telling you which sections. You don't need to look at the entire digest. So those are some of the resources that are going to be really important for the 2017 contest, both the county and the state. I'd like to show you some of the other items that I have up here on the table that are kind of like what I call pelts, parts, and pieces. In one of the other segments, we talked specifically about pelts. We talked about skulls and scat and trags. But when you get to the contest, you may not see a whole mount, such as some of the mounts that I have behind me here. You may only see parts. You may see wings. And have to identify the species simply by its wing and the types of feathers and the coloration. This particular one is a hen pheasant. So pheasant sometimes is part of it, and you may not see the whole bird. You may not see a whole mount or a picture of one. You may just see a wing. This is a set of antlers in velvet. So don't be fooled if you're only used to seeing the hard antler. Sometimes prior to that deer having hard antler, it's growing and it's got this what we call velvet, which is simply a hair attached to the antlers. So this obviously would be an example of white-tailed deer sign. Just don't put stick down for the answer to this one. Yes, it's a stick, but it's showing sign of something. If you look really close, you'll be able to see the tooth marks, the incisor tooth marks, as well as see how this branch was actually cut off by a beaver. So this is a beaver chew, so an example of a beaver sign. These walnuts that are cut in half would be an example of a squirrel. So again, you may see the sign of something and not the actual animal itself. So this contest is designed to make you think a little bit, what could have left this sign? So this just an example. You may also see some feathers of another common species that we have in Pennsylvania. These would be the wing feathers of a turkey and part of the tail fan of a turkey. So these are common feathers that you can find in pretty much every county of Pennsylvania. And so there's a really good chance that you may see just feathers or a feather. So it's a good idea to brush up on those types of things. When it comes to waterfowl, really good chance that you're just going to see a wing. And what you're going to look for is the different colorations on the speculum, which is this colorful part on the wing. This example, when you see the white, blue, white, or white, purple, white, that's a mallard. So that's probably one of our most common ducks in Pennsylvania. So you may not see this one. It might be too easy for the contest, but this is one that I use as an example. So you see the white, purple, white, or white, blue, white, that should tell you that that's a mallard. When you get to the contest, you may not actually see whole mounts. So you may see parts, or you may actually see decoys. Behind me, there's a swan decoy. We're using the decoys because they're more durable. If you happen to be outside and it happens to be raining that day, we're not going to want really good mounts sitting out there. So you may end up seeing a decoy from a swan or a coyote. You may see mounts. Some of the mounts that we have are Canada goose here. You may see some birds of prey. We've got a gray-faced screech owl right here. And again, maybe you're just going to see a wing or a tail feather or just feet. But this is an example of one of the common birds of prey. At the bottom of this mount would be another really good example. There are pellets down here. So the pellet would be the giveaway that it was from an owl, let's say. You may not be able to distinguish what bird of prey, but you could at least say a pellet, a regurgitated pellet. Then the other mount that we have is a barn owl. And barn owl differs from all the other owl species, primarily because he doesn't have feathers all the way down the bottom of his feet, which is a really good example that you may just see the feet and have to determine which owl it is. Only one owl in Pennsylvania has feet that are exposed like that with feathers that don't go all the way down. So those are some examples. You may see mounts, you may see decoys, you may see parts and pieces. But it's really important to look at those at the study guide and see what kind of resources are available. And if you have any questions, make sure you contact your conservation district. And that ends this segment of the Envirothon Wildlife Resource.